Hello and welcome to the Scottsdale Living podcast. I'm going to be your host today. I'm Dr. Amber Enright and owner of The Therapy Doctor. I'm a small business here in Arizona, and this podcast is actually designed to feature other small businesses and other small business owners that we think are outstanding in our community. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guest, Bonnie Moehle. She is a personal, executive, and relationship coach. She's actually my personal life coach as well. And I think I've known Bonnie for about 3.5 years now. She's really passionate about helping all of her clients. And the amount of resource that this woman has offered me personally is immeasurable. So I had to have her on today. She was honestly just referred to me from some of my very best friends. So I was going through some things, some personal life changes, and realizing that I was in a bad mental space. And one of the best things that I think that Bonnie may or may probably knows that she's continuing to teach me all the time is how to be not kinder to myself. I have always loved seeing you. I've honestly sometimes also said to myself, oh my gosh, this is so hard, because a lot of the things that you do when you're trying to better yourself are really challenging. And I just have always been really impressed with the way that you have honesty and have candor about exactly what somebody needs to hear, not exactly what they want to hear. And that has to probably be a really hard job. So without further ado, Bonnie Moehle.
Well, thank you for having me here, Amber. And you're right, it is hard because you have to take everything that you've ever learned and throw it in the garbage and start all over, letting go of old programming and thought patterns and belief systems. And that is what makes all the difference. It takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of desire. And you really have to work hard in order to make the changes.
Man, you talk about having the desire to change. There have been many times where I stopped coming in for a little bit of time because I wasn't willing to face the music. And by the time that I did, I realized how badly I should have done that maybe 3 or 6 months prior. And I came back in basically telling you like, it's like, I used to have this piano instructor and she was amazing. Kind of one of my heroes, Sunny Fichtel. She wore linen clothes and she had a baby grand in her living room. And she had the most calligraphy handwriting you've ever seen. It was just perfect. Beautiful. And I admired her so much that I never wanted to let her down. And it was one of those things where I realized I was letting myself down by not challenging myself to really step up and do the work of it. And so every time that I find myself going, oh my gosh, this is hard, I'm like, okay, well, it's hard because it's going to be good for me. And I might not be willing to accept it now, but it's pertinent. And out of this will come really great things. So like, I got to dig in and I got to spend more time on it. So not that I do it right all the time, but I really, really have always liked the encouragement. And again, just the actual candor of it. One of her true gifts, I think, is helping people uncover their real potential. So that could be, like I said, in business, she's helped executives. She's helped just normal people get through relationship stuff. She's helped some of my very best friends get through really tumultuous marriage issues. And the goal is to really be true about what you want on the inside. And a lot of people like myself really struggled with identifying that because I wanted to please people so badly. And a lot of that, it still exists inside of me, like you said, programming. And so it can be really hard for us to overcome that. When you talk about programming, tell us a little bit about what that means and maybe even about what this means to you, like to do this work for other people. How did it start for you? What makes you so passionate about helping people this way?
All right. Well, I think I'll start with how it started. So part of it is I feel as though I was born for this. I'm the oldest of 4 children, and I was always the cheerleader and the support system and the person that all my siblings went to when they, wanted protection from mom. You know how that is when we're kids. And so it came very naturally to me to be that person that everybody went to. But what happened and how I actually got into this, because my degree is in radiologic sciences, I used to be the director of a school that trained X-ray technologists.
New facts about Bonnie I did not know. Cool.
And I used to teach physics and anatomy and physiology and run the school. So it's a completely different
Wow.
Yeah, a path that I was taking. But in 1992, I started reading lots and lots and lots of books about spirituality and metaphysics and personal development. And really what prompted that was I was living in Chicago. That's where I grew up. And I came to Arizona on a vacation.
To all those Chicago people out there, go Cubs!
Yeah. Yes. So we had come on a vacation to Arizona and we went and visited the Native American ruins.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something about that just really touched my heart. And so I went home and I started reading all these books about Native American history.
Mm-hmm.
But those books led to me reading about Native American philosophy. And it was the Native American philosophy that resonated with me at such a deep level because it was all about oneness and connectedness and personal responsibility and giving rather than taking. And it just so struck me. And once I started reading about Native American philosophy, I realized that it also was the same as Buddhism and Taoism. And I just couldn't stop reading. Every book that I could get my hands on, I was reading about all these different ideas about oneness and personal responsibility and self-healing and self-growth. Now, at the same time, I had IBS-D, irritable bowel syndrome, and my stomach was always sick. And because I was reading all of this and there wasn't a doctor that knew how to heal me, I came to the conclusion that this was an emotional thing.
Aww.
And that I needed to take a look at it from an emotional standpoint.
How relatable is that, right? So it's one of the physical symptoms of feeling terribly stressed or emotional or just panic that your body kind of goes into fight or flight response. And then you get this opposite swing the other way. And oh my gosh, I have to go to the bathroom. So,
Yes.
but beyond that, having IBS where you're constantly maybe up or down or have mixed, and how absolutely tumultuous to have to deal with that all of the time every day because of the state your body or your mind is in.
Yeah. Well, and it was horrible because anxiety and worry, that's where I was, caused the IBS. But then if I felt a little twinge in my stomach, then I'd get anxious and worried that maybe I wouldn't find a bathroom or I wouldn't make it to the next, rest stop. And so it was just this, cycle of worry and IBS and worry. And so I started to explore, how can I heal this from within? And it really was clear to me that it was about what was going on in my head. The worry, the fear, the projecting, the thinking that if I constantly worried about the future, that somehow I was protecting or preparing myself. Just a little hint to all of you who are listening. Worry and fear do not protect or prepare you. They just make you do stupid stuff.
Oh, yes. Man, again, so relatable because you can think of yourself in any fear state and how responsive we get. Oh my gosh, I have to react. Okay, but we don't. And we have to actually use our mind still.
Yeah.
We actually have to think our way out of a situation. We were out camping the other weekend. We have a whole bunch of friends and they're all on dirt bikes. And one of my girlfriends won the race. It's her and two guys, smoked them by a landslide. And so they're like, line them up. We got to go again. That wasn't fair. You weigh less, all the different things. So they line up again and 15 feet off the starting track. Mind you, her husband and I are both in front and behind recording this. So we saw the whole thing in slow motion later. But she went down like a sack of potatoes onto her hand and hit her head. I mean, she is banged up. And her ring is crushing her finger. And she is so... I think she probably had a little concussion, but she's so shaken that nobody's making good decisions. She's bleeding. Everybody's all over the place with stuff. And I keep giving really specific instructions to my friends in the group, and they cannot calm themselves down enough to think about what to do or how to follow the instruction. They're all just trying to do stuff and react. And so it took probably a good 10 minutes for each. I could see this little thing where talking stopped and they stopped just moving like this and actually went to complete a task. And it really took like 10 minutes to get out of that reactionary fear response where they could follow a regular, can you get me pliers? I have to cut this ring off of her hand now because her finger is getting swollen. It took like eye contact and communication. And in that sitting, I was calm. But in many other settings, I would not be the calm one. I would not be the one to take charge. I would have to stop and do the same things that my friends needed to do and adjust myself. So it was just really interesting to see from that perspective. And I'm like, how many times have I done that? Probably 1 million.
Well, and that's a perfect example of how we have this belief that projecting into the future and being in fear is going to help us make better decisions or be prepared. And really the truth is, and this is something that maybe we could talk about later, but it's when you're in the present moment and you're not worrying about the future and projecting with fear that you make the best decisions and that you have the clarity. And so that what you're describing is a perfect example of that. We don't have clarity when we're all worried and fearful and caught up in our heads. It's when we get out of our heads that we get clarity. And so, and then, to just kind of finish what I was sharing with you is once I started using what I was reading in the books and applying it to myself and seeing that in 3 months, I was able to heal 20 years of IBS.
Wow.
By working through what was going on in my mind, what was happening in my emotional state, healing that, releasing it, reprogramming it. I thought, this is too good. I can't keep it to myself. So I went back to school and I went to Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. And I'm also, aside from a life coach, I am a certified hypnotherapist as well.
So you went from radiology and physics to Southwest Medicine School and hypnotherapy. And so you're a science-based spiritual healer. And I think that the word spiritual sometimes can turn people off. It's like, we live in the valley and it's like, I'm so spiritual, and nobody knows what that means, that they have a bad connotation with it. And it took me a while to kind of warm up to like, oh yeah, we are still talking about like physical properties of energy and transfer and personal control and personal accountability and responsibility. And all of those things make sense to science.
Yes.
They calm us down. They have physiologic responses.
Right. To me, spirituality and physics are the same thing. The fact that I have a background in physics is so perfect for what I do because everything when it comes to personal development, when it comes to the law of attraction, I love teaching people how to manifest and what the law of attraction is about. But it's all about your vibration. It's about your energy and how do you shift your vibration. And when we're walking around beating ourselves up or thinking a lot of negative thoughts or thinking it won't happen or I can't or, worry, fear, we're not vibrating where we need to be vibrating in order to attract things that we would like to attract into our lives. So it is really about physics. So to me, when you talk spirituality, it's not about religion. It's not about going to church. It's about that connectedness, that oneness. It's about where you're vibrating. It's about personal responsibility and all those things that I resonated with when I first started reading about Native American philosophy.
I love that. I really love that. So it makes me think of like some of the books that I think I've read during this time. It was like the Book of Joy, the Tao of Pooh, which I really liked, the Four Agreements. I like that. So a lot of these things are like kind of probably the little bit of basis, like some introductory work. But one of the things that I've always liked is that you give me real homework, stuff that I have to like, you have to catch these thoughts. These are the negative thoughts. So once you catch them, these are the steps to do it. So I know you have an actual program. When I very first started with you, it's almost like going to a class. And can you tell me a little bit about how you developed that framework? So you had some...
That's interesting because I didn't really sit down and go, oh, I have to develop a framework. It just happened. And I'm really about being in the flow and being present and allowing things to come to you. And so it just came to me. And part of it was through my experiences of living it myself. So every single thing that I teach to my clients, I'm a business owner. So if they're coming to me for business, it's what have I done in my own business to have a successful business? when it comes to personal development or relationships. It's all about things that I've experienced myself. I never teach anybody anything that I haven't tried myself. And I know that it works. I know that it helps. I know that it makes a difference. And so all of this comes from what were my experiences. And so I'll kind of give you a slight overview, but my experiences were that the first thing that really struck me when I started reading all this information was that thoughts are things, and I've got to really watch what my thoughts are and change my thoughts. So that's the first thing I started to do. And I noticed where the struggles were, and I noticed there were times when I felt like I was lying to myself when I was changing the thought. So I had to come up with a way in my own mind to convince myself that I wasn't lying to myself. And what I came up with was the realization that thoughts are not who you are. Thoughts are just seeds that you're planting in your mind. And when you plant them and they take root because you're repeating them and visualizing them, then they start to become your perceptions and your behaviors and your emotions and the choices you make automatically. And so for any of you who are trying to change your thoughts, if you notice that sometimes it feels like you're lying to yourself, instead of thinking that thoughts are truth or lie or real or not real, think of them more as brain food. What am I feeding into my mind? Because whatever I'm feeding into my mind is what comes back out in the form of how I react, how I respond, how I behave, how I perceive, and really the reality of how I experience my life.
Yeah, absolutely. They say to like, you're becoming the people around you. So I would extend that to like, I absorb the thoughts of the people that are constantly speaking, the way that they're speaking, the verbiage that they're using. We've all caught ourselves using a phrase that one of our best friends uses, you know? And so when we're thinking about those as just introductions to our thoughts too, like protecting our mind from the things that we might not want to actually expose ourselves to. I don't like watching horror movies because it gives me nightmares, but it also makes me think that those things in the movies could happen to me. And so exposing myself to those things on repeat or even once is not a positive experience for me, maybe for the day, for the night, or the rest of the week. And when I think about it like that, I also more as I grow older, think about that sometimes with people too, where I'm like, this connotation is not something that I am interested in propagating currently. And whereas when I was younger, I didn't have those boundaries, and I still am working on them because I meet so many people all of the time. I want to, I love meeting people. First of all, I'm so social.
Yes, you are.
And it's one of my vibrational energies is that I can go into a place and bring high energy and get high energy. And so it makes me feel good that other people feel good to raise their energy. And so, you know, it's interesting that you bring up all of these things. If I come in really mellow and quiet and just use my hands, I can have that impact on someone else too. So, you know, what we are absorbing from other people and then also what we're putting out, I really am hoping to master more of that myself because I think it touches every single thing that I do.
Well, and that's one thing, you know, when you talk about that and setting healthy boundaries is really about self-love. When we are comfortable in our own skin, when we really love ourselves, when we're grounded in knowing who we are and all of our inner strengths, when we focus on our strengths instead of our weaknesses, when we stop beating ourselves up, you know, everybody thinks beating yourself up will make you better. Beating yourself up does not make you better.
No.
Beating yourself up is more negative food that you're feeding into the subconscious. And then that creates behaviors and perceptions in particular. So when we're really hard on ourselves, we start to perceive that people are judging us. We perceive that so-and-so doesn't like me. We take things personally. We become defensive. So part of my program then is not only to shift your mindset and catch the thinking that is in opposition to what you want to experience.
She calls it stinking thinking, like catch your stinking thinking. Yeah, I love it.
I didn't make that up though.
Oh, okay.
I think Zig Ziglar did.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
But I do love that too. So, you know, self-love, when, you know, a lot of our behavior, well, all of our behaviors are a natural offshoot from what is going on in our head. So if you are loving yourself and really focusing on what's right about you, people think, oh, that'll make me complacent and then I won't try harder. No, the more you focus on what you do right, the more right you do. It just promotes more of that behavior. So your behaviors, again, are a result of what's going on in your head. So don't be hard on yourself. Being hard on yourself, I promise you, will never make you better.
I just can't. I can picture myself as like quite a miserable person, like to myself first, and then to people around me, because I was so highly defensive and I was feeding myself all this negativity. And sometimes I fall into that same pattern that I had for 33 years. And it's really still hard to unprogram. Like you talked about the initial programming of whatever your environment was, that so many people are taught, or by example, probably mostly, that, you know, certain things should be allowed that really shouldn't. And to change that can take thousands of repetitions of you correcting thousands. And I always think about like babies walking, like the first time they stand and it doesn't go well, but they stood and then they fall down and they get like this massive, everybody cheers. Woo!
Yeah,
oh my gosh, we're so
and
happy.
then they want to get right back up.
Right. And so they want to do it because they got the cheerleading and they got this big dopamine dump and it feels great. But nobody does that for you when you're thinking positive thoughts.
But you have to give it to yourself.
Correct.
Yes.
So it takes thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions and nobody's cheerleading you, but it feels better when you're doing it. So I think that it takes more repetitions as an adult to do something that you don't get accolade for, but you can feel better about it every time you do it. Like it literally is less stressful. And I think that, you know, my generation is living in I hate this word, but a toxic environment where everybody is constantly seeking to get out of all the people around them. And we're like probably one of the most manipulative generations where we're using all of our emotion and all of our social media pull to make someone feel good or bad or the other way. And it's fascinating to see all around you that the most attention goes to like the most dramatic response you can possibly get. So to live okay not having that and like work through your stuff on your own takes quite a bit of work to do. It really does. There's so many things grabbing your attention. To sit quietly with your thoughts or your work takes a lot of doing.
Well, and the problem with all of that is that that's like eating a cookie. Feels really good for the minute you're eating the cookie and then it goes away.
Yeah, it's addiction.
And so, yes, it is. And so it's what can I get next and what can I get next? And there's never that inner feeling of satisfaction or gratification or I'm enough. I've got to seek that next external thing. Real self-love, I don't need the external thing. If I get it, great. And if I don't, great. Either way, I'm good because I know who I am. And so this is why that's important. And then again, when it comes to setting healthy boundaries, that happens automatically when you are grounded in knowing who you are and you really love yourself.
You feel like you have respect for yourself, and I would not allow that to happen.
Correct.
As my respected self.
Yes. And you're not afraid. Well, you're not afraid to say no. And everybody, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to say no because I don't want to hurt their feelings. But what's that really about? I don't want to hurt their feelings because they might not like me and I need them to like me because I don't like me enough. So that's really what it's about.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Or, I don't want to have conflict. Why? Because then they won't like me and I need them to like me because I don't like me. So self-love is definitely an important part of what I work with everybody on, whether it's business or personal. And the other thing that I think is really important is body awareness. We all have, I call it the internal teacher, but we all have this little mechanism inside of us that alerts us to when we are out of alignment with what our desires are, who we are. And so if we're beating ourselves up, we feel uncomfortable. If we're thinking a negative thought, we feel uncomfortable. If we are fearing the future, we feel uncomfortable. Why? Everybody thinks that that's a bad thing. Oh my gosh, I have this feeling of anxiety in my body. That's bad. It's not bad. It's a message. And it's a message. Check in. What are you thinking? How are you reacting? That needs to change. And so teaching people to, instead of hating our uncomfortable emotions, really seeing them as a gift. And the gift is, your emotion, anxiety, worry, stress, fear. I'm trying to tell you something about how you're thinking, about how you're reacting, about how you're seeing yourself. And so learning how to listen to that as a message rather than hating it and just trying to drink or take drugs or eat, or one of my favorites, retail therapy.
Oh, man.
To try to distract ourselves from what we feel. We actually need to feel what we feel and understand that those feelings are telling us something about what's going on here. And then learning how to shift that. I teach a really nice little process. I call it the 4 steps, and it's a little process for recognizing uncomfortable emotions and then actually being able to process through, shift, and reprogram. And when you do that repeatedly, all of a sudden the old program releases, the new program takes over. And I've had clients who say, I've had anxiety for 20 years. I wish I had met you sooner, because in 4 sessions, you taught me how to use this 4-step process and process right through the anxiety. And now I'm managing it and I can see actually overcoming it. I do not have, I won't say never, but I rarely feel anxious because I use these steps all the time on myself.
I personally definitely wish I had known you when I was like 8 years old. I was the most emotional person you've ever met. I would cry when people looked at me. I would cry if anybody raised their voice. I would cry if I felt like somebody didn't like me. I mean, just not like streaming tears.
Aww.
And the more I tried to control it, the worse it got. Same with sweating.
Yeah.
I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
And he talked about the prolific sweating. And now I'm like, hey, like, have you seen this? And I don't worry about it. And it makes me sweat less. And it's like such an interesting thing that we can control so much of how we feel and be with it. Like, okay, like I'm sweating. Sweating is natural.
Right.
Sweating is normal. I'm not even hot. If I feel super stressed or an environment triggers, excitement of some kind, I sweat. Sweating is normal. I don't have to feel bad about it. And I kind of have to coach myself through this thing because it's literally something that I was made fun of for, but it wasn't something that even if someone said something about, I had to feel any kind of way about. So, switching, thinking about things, no matter what it was, but even about crying, like, that's okay. Right. I'm allowed to have emotions. Yes. It's okay.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
So to me, it's about resistance. We have a lot of resistance to everything in our lives. I have an uncomfortable feeling in my body. What do? I hate it. I resist it. No, move into it. Feel it. Let it be there. Allow it to be there. I wasn't sure if I was going to share this today, but in 2006, I was fishing up in the Mogollon Rim and I got bit by a tick. And I have Lyme disease. My doctor says of the people that she sees, I'm of the most highly functioning Lyme person that she knows. And the reason I believe is because Lyme causes some really, really uncomfortable symptoms, but I don't go into resistance. If you go into resistance when you feel ill, when you feel sick, when you're scared, immediately the body goes into protection mode like this. And everything tightens up. But what happens? You're a doctor. When everything tightens up, the blood doesn't flow properly, which means your cells aren't oxygenated as well as they should be, which means that you're no longer releasing the toxins. It means that your nervous system isn't flowing well. It means that your endocrine system is not operating to its optimal. So when we keep doing this and being in resistance,
pain for your own body.
Exactly. And so once you let go of resistance, and just accept what is and allow yourself to relax into it, this is when it releases, and this is when you're able to have more healing. And when things like sweating lessen, when stress and anxiety lessen, when, I work with a lot of people who have Lyme disease or chronic pain or chronic illness, and chronic pain and chronic illness, people immediately want to go into resistance. Teaching them how to let go and just allow yourself to feel it. I've had severe, severe vertigo as a result of Lyme because I have nerve damage in my inner ear, so it causes this vertigo. Tried the Upley maneuver. That didn't heal it. And when I'm laying there and I'm so sick and the room's spinning and I'm throwing up into a bucket, sorry, everybody, the best thing that I can do is just let it be, as the Beatles say. Just don't have any resistance to it. And I get through it so much easier, so much more effortlessly, just because I'm not tightening up to it. I'm flowing with it. I heard this story. I think it is a Buddhist or Taoist story. I can't remember. But it was about a monk who would jump into the bottom of a raging waterfall every morning. And the villagers around him were flabbergasted, like, why is he jumping into the bottom of a raging waterfall every morning? And so somebody went up to him one day and said, dude, why are you jumping into the bottom of this raging waterfall every morning? And he said, well, the first time I actually fell in. And I was fighting the waves. And because I was fighting them, I actually nearly drowned. But it was such a wonderful lesson. So I started instead purposely jumping into the bottom of the waterfall and allowing myself to just flow with the waves. And now I do it every day to just remind me to let go of resistance, stop trying to control the things that I can't. And again, this is a big part of what I love to teach everybody, because when we're trying to control the things that we can't, it's so stressful. But when we can just let go and flow with life, life becomes so much easier, so much more peaceful. It's amazing. And again, I had to learn this myself, but I know the difference, and the difference is so much better.
Yeah. I can always tell when I'm actually practicing my stuff and when I'm not, and I haven't been paying attention to my thoughts, and it starts coming out in everything that I do. And so it really is constant work. It's constantly trying to grow. It's constantly trying to sometimes relearn things that I've just undone myself.
Yeah.
But I wanted to read a few reviews that just are on your Yelp, because I love reading these. There's something about connecting with someone, and so many people are able to connect with you. It's incomparable how many people you've helped on such a deep level. So I wanted to read some of these. Bonnie is my angel and most treasured confidant and advisor. I trust her implicitly, and she's a joy to be around. I mean, trust her implicitly. There's not many things that I couldn't come to you and share. And there's not many things that you wouldn't be honest about, like, hey, you got to clean that up if you want to do real work. You have to be honest with yourself. Is that really what you meant? Is that really what it looked like? Is that really what happened? Like challenging me to think about my thinking or think about my perception of things. Let's see. Bonnie has an extraordinary gift. At the core, she is an extremely gifted teacher. She has years of education under her belt that no school can teach. I mean, these literally go on and on. I never thought I'd see a life coach, but when a good friend of mine told me about the positive changing she was experiencing because of Bonnie, I decided to give her a call. These are paragraphs long. Everybody writes a lot when they review you, because it is that life altering. And, just like many of these people, they've commented about how Bonnie is my life coach and is a life changer. I'm not exaggerating. She welcomed me into her office, and I was immediately at ease in discussing what my issues were that I needed help with. She's concise, professional, and will train you on how to bring out the best of any situation or circumstance. I'm amazed after just 4 visits, the improvement in my daily life. That was something that, like, when I first came in, I was very uncomfortable, and I was adopted. I went to therapy when I was like 8 years old every single week for years. And I think I always had this like kind of perception about every other therapist than my childhood therapist, that they weren't even listening, that I wasn't, again, terrible perception issues, or that somebody was basically only interested as far as my paycheck could give them. To be able to check in with someone, you've checked in with me if I needed something, or you were feeling something that I was going through, or you just wanted me to be send me a reminder about something that I'm working on that you knew I needed a little maybe encouragement. And to have that goes a long way. It's about keeping people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's no better way to do that than with someone who will be truthfully honest with you, just super painfully honest with you, because it helps me be accountable to myself and responsible to myself. And it makes me feel validated and heard to be that authentic with myself as well.
Well, sometimes also, and this is why the honesty is so important, is it's hard to see in yourself what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the reasons that I'm brutally honest, is because I want you to see what it is that you're getting hung up on or where you're caught.
Mm-hmm.
And because if you don't see it, if you don't have that awareness, then how can you possibly work through it?
Mm-hmm.
So, have you ever heard that adage, choose your hard?
I think you've said it to me.
Okay. Maybe I need some more material. I don't know. Choose your hard. You're right. It is hard to do this work. You do have to look at yourself. Then you do have to do the homework. Then you have to keep yourself accountable. Then you have to be self-aware. But it's hard to be unhappy. It's hard to be stressed out. It's hard to be anxious. It's hard to be fearful.
Miserable.
It's hard to be, it's hard to be in a bad relationship. So that's hard. It's hard to do the work on yourself. Choose your hard. Which hard do you want? It's all hard. Yeah. So, which one is going to reap the benefit? And so to me, that's what it's all about. And again, I'm not asking anybody to do something I haven't done on myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have a little ritual every morning. Every morning before I even get out of bed, I do two things. I practice gratitude for several reasons. Number one, because I'm so grateful for the life that I'm living, but also because when you practice gratitude, you're focusing on have. When we focus on have, we get more have. And also because it raises your vibration to focus on what you have, to focus on what you're grateful for. And when I do gratitude, I say it with such feeling and such meaning because I am so grateful. But again, that raises the vibration. And
can you
manifesting
give us an example of that? Like, because when you first talked to me about making these sentences, I still struggle with it sometimes. Like, I am, I have. Can you walk us through one?
Well, that's not how I do the gratitude. The gratitude, it's interesting, and I'll get back to that. But with gratitude, I will focus on what I have. I just moved to Fountain Hills a year and a half ago, and I love it. I'm so grateful to be living in Fountain Hills. I'm so grateful for all my amazing clients and the people that I get to interact with and connect with. I'm so grateful for the referrals that I receive. I'm so grateful for my lovely, wonderful husband who works hard on himself. And so I will say those kinds of things. But also when you're practicing gratitude, you can do gratitude as an intention. So before we found our home in Fountain Hills, I wanted to manifest a home in Fountain Hills. So I used to lay in bed and say, I am so grateful for my beautiful home that has all the features that I desire, and I would name what they are, and thank you, thank you, thank you. And by the way, I read that Albert Einstein said thank you 100 times a day. Because he was all about physics. And what's physics about? It's about energy. It's about vibration. What's your energy like when you're in gratitude? Okay, so that's one thing. I'll get back to the I am statements, I promise. The other thing that I practice in the morning is presence. And presence is like a meditation, but, and that's something that we haven't touched on. And if you want, we could come back to it. But I think that it is so important to know how to live in the present moment. We are so in our heads. We rest our bodies every night when we go to sleep, but we do not rest our minds. And the only way to give your mind a break is either through meditation or the practice of presence. And so every morning before I get out of bed, I'm emptying my mind and I just get present. And I will find a focal point and I'll either listen to the birds outside or the dogs on the bed next to me breathing or whatever it might be. The beat of my heart. I will just spend time being present before I even get out of bed. So now I have this combination in the morning of I've practiced gratitude, I've raised my energy, and I've emptied my mind, that I do not have any negative thinking, fear-based thinking, projecting, guilt, anxiety, anything like that. And this is how I'm starting my day. So I think presence also is something that's really important. Now, as far as the I am statements, really where not only do I love it, the affirmation, especially when it comes to self-love. I am smart. I am strong. I love to learn and grow. I am non-judgmental. These are the things that I like to tell myself as an affirmation. I am. But where the I am, I have, I do, it is statements also are really important is when you are becoming aware of what you think about and it opposes what you want, you've got to change it. Mm-hmm. I am, I have, I do, it is. And so I'll never have enough time to finish my project. I have plenty of time. I'm getting it all done. I always get it all done. Funny, I had a client who I haven't talked to in many years because a lot of people will check back with me years later. Mm-hmm. Something new in their lives comes up and they want to come back for a fix. Mm-hmm. And she says, Bonnie, I still tell myself I have plenty of time and everything's getting done effortlessly. Because that's one of my mantras. That. And, I've been telling myself that for years and I never worry I don't get overwhelmed. I just don't because I know I'm going to get it all done because I tell myself I'm going to get it all done. And because I tell myself I'm going to get it all done, somehow that turns into my behaviors and then I get it all done. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I am, I have, I do, it is just taking what the negative or fear-based thought is and turning it around into something in the present tense. And you want it to be in the present tense because the subconscious follows your instructions as you put them into the subconscious. So if you say I am, you will behave like you are. And if you say I have, you'll behave like you have. But if you say I'm going to, you'll behave like someday you're going to. So you don't want to do that one.
In the distant future.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I absolutely love talking to you all the time. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I never leave without feeling absolutely amazing about what I've decided to do for myself. And I really love that about working with you. I hope a lot of people work with you, but if they want to, how do they find you?
Well, I do have a website, and it's Bonnie Moehle is how you pronounce my last name, but it's spelled Moehle.
We'll tag that in the bottom if you're watching this on YouTube.
Yeah, so BonnieMoehle.com. There's a place on my website. You can't make an appointment, but you can request one. I like to talk to you before we make an appointment. Maybe I'm a little old school that way. So that would be the easiest way is just to go on the website and get my contact information. You can also just call me, 602-717-6228. And I am very accessible, as Amber said. I will, I don't go, oh, you can only talk to me when you're in session. Mm-hmm. I think that's horrible.
And you could treat people all over the world because you can also do it on Zoom. Mm-hmm. I prefer the in-person because I'm just an in-person person. Mm-hmm. I prefer in-person interaction. Mm-hmm. I like interacting with you physically and the energy is there. And also it keeps me more attentive. Mm-hmm. When I interact with people on a screen, I can get really easily distracted by the stuff on my desk or my phone buzzing. When I'm in person with someone, that does not happen. So, you have options for how you can access Bonnie for an actual session with her or coaching with her, whatever it is that you need outside of being able to just message her.
Well, I do. I have people that I talk to all over the world. It's hard when my client in New Zealand has to figure out the schedule because they're like 19 hours ahead of us.
Oh my gosh.
But it works and we do it. I've even done hypnosis over Zoom on people all over the world, all over the country. It works. And so, I'm not limited to anybody in Arizona. Anybody can come talk to me.
Well, thank you for being a resource for the community, for all my fellow business owners, and for myself. Thank you so much, Bonnie. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you, Amber. I adore you.
Thank you. All right. That's been our episode of today's podcast. See you soon.